Hello, Kasey from Hello Cloud Certs. In this video, I'll walk you through Lab HCC GCP Lab 1026. HCC GCP Lab 1026. The lab is about Google Cloud Shell. Just getting familiar with the Google Cloud Shell is the objective of this lab. So I'll just walk you through what the Cloud Shell is all about and how to use it. So let's look at high-level steps for this particular lab. What we're going to do is start at the console like we do for most of the labs. And we're going to start there. And then I'm going to show you how to jump onto the Cloud Shell and what it does. So Cloud Shell, what is it? Let me give you a brief introduction, though I do cover that in substantive lecture, but I'll give you some brief introduction here as well. So Cloud Shell is a full-fledged virtual machine that is available for every project. So it is a free VM provisioned as a part of your project on the fly by Google Cloud Platform, so that it is integrated into your environment. You don't have to install SDK on your own laptop if you want to try, issue some commands to your GCP platform. You want to build some servers, you want to build data lab, you want to build a cluster, Kubernetes cluster, for example. You can do all that from the Cloud Shell itself. You don't need to run it from your own computer, and that's a really handy feature in my opinion. You can do many things. Almost all of these labs can be done from the Cloud Shell. So really important. I really like that feature. I miss that in AWS. In fact, Azure provides similar functionality. But the GCP's Cloud Shell is really popular and heavily used, and you're going to make friends with it. So I thought to create a dedicated lab for it. So when you use it, when you need to use it in many of my hands-on labs that I have for all the certifications, preparation for GCP, you can use it comfortably. You can take it to the next level as well. I'll just give you some introductory information. So the VM, it's a VM. Spun up on the fly. As you click on that icon, it is spun up, and within like 3, 4, 5 seconds, it has 5 gigabytes of persistent storage. That storage only in the home directory. So anything under your home directory stays, but the rest of the VM will be recycled. So you will lose everything outside of your home directory. So if you want some items, some files, some information to stay or persist, you need to store it under your home directory. And then it will be rebuilt every time. So they don't, you not charge for it, and Google will not incur any charges when you're not using it. It will time out if you don't use it for a few minutes as well. You can open multiple tabs of the Cloud Shell as well, but you cannot open multiple tabs of a browser window and have Cloud Shell in each one of them, right? So only in one tab, for example, but multiple tabs within the Cloud Shell are allowed. So you can do various things while you wait on one shell window. You can be doing other things on the other shell windows. All right, so we'll deploy a VM by just clicking on it. First of all, we'll start the Cloud Shell, and then we'll deploy a virtual machine instance, Compute Engine instance with the G-Cloud Compute Instances create command. And then we'll use some, I'll show you how to use Editor. It has Nano, Vim, Emacs even, so several editors built in. A lot of tools are built in, like Git is built in, obviously G-Cloud, Google SDK is built in. So you can use those. You don't need to install anything to get started really. And that's the purpose of the Cloud Shell in Google Cloud Platform. So we'll create an index.html, for example, with the Nano Editor, and we'll just put that information so we can use that as a part of your web server, for example. You can do upload and download, and we'll talk about that. Now you can use this for the web service. As I said, you can transfer files between the Cloud Shell and your local computer. So if you want to transfer something from your local machine to the Cloud Shell, you can do so, and vice versa. And from Cloud Shell, then you can SCP into the instance as well. In the Cloud Shell window, so we'll go through how to do that. And then let's scroll down, see what else we are going to do. We'll create a bucket here. So we will use gsutil command for creating a bucket. We'll list the bucket. and you can also transfer files to the bucket while you're in the Cloud Shell, back and forth. There is a very nice code editor. This is relatively new capability within the Cloud Shell, but you can look at the code. So, for example, when you're deploying App Engine application, you can look at this code and then you can modify it. It's a small, tiny editor, but very functional visual editor. Nano and Emacs and Vim are command line based editor. This is a visual editor, so you can see the files, and it's a Windows based program. So your Cloud Shell will be split into two windows, and you can see the code on the top and Cloud Shell terminal on the bottom. And you can modify the files and save it and run it, right? So you can do Git Clone. We will do Git Clone, download a particular file, and then we will examine the code in the code editor. So very useful, tiny little tool. Obviously, it's not as full-fledged as some of the editors that I use and we use, such as Sublime Text and VS Code and Atom and others. But it's decent enough, gets the job done. And this is an important differentiator. Cloud Shell is a differentiator of GCP, obviously not in really terms of capability per se, meaning compute, storage, or anything like that, but really gets you started right away. Just to deploy a server and logging into it in case of AWS sometimes can be challenging for newcomers. But here with the Cloud Shell, you can straight away get into it, and you can deploy your Kubernetes cluster with a single command on a Cloud Shell within like a minute of getting started. So that's the power of Cloud Shell. I really like it. Most users who start using it like it. So make sure you take full advantage of that. Certification exam relevance for this particular topic. Cloud Shell is integral. It's a means to an end, as I say in many other topics. Very important for you to know that it's ephemeral in terms of rest of the storage, but 5 GB of home directory will stay. And it's available with all the tools, not all, but most of the tools that you would be using on a regular basis. It's already there for you. So let's just get started. I want to go to the console for GCP, and then I'm going to go to the Cloud Shell, and Cloud Shell will start right there. So that is the icon, activate Google Cloud Shell. This is my project ID, and that's where I'm logged in, and I want to start. So it's at a project level, it's not at a VM level, because it itself is a virtual machine. Now GCP is launching that VM as if you launch your own VM, but it's authenticated to your project. See that it's associated with my project ID. So sometimes I like to make this window a little bit bigger if I'm working more on the Cloud Shell, and I recommend you do that. And other times, if you're just typing one command here and you're watching things up in the upper window, for example, you're building a compute and you're watching it here, what's happening, then normal size window or even a smaller window would be sufficient. But if you're working more, you can do that. Also, there's a full screen and opening a new window type of option available. So now you will have the whole Cloud Shell window in its own tab. So you have a lot of workspace to deal with. Again, if you're doing a lot of work at the command line, you can do that. Now, because we open this in a new browser tab, it will be gone from here. So you cannot have two, but you can have two tabs within the Cloud Shell. So you could be running one program here. If it's waiting, if it's taking long, you can type another command here. Or if you just want multiple tabs, like terminals allow you to do that, or just like a browser effect or experience, you can do so as well. So this is your once again compute engine and all that. So let me get back first before I'll exit here, and I will stay with the smaller version down here. So once you deploy it, and if you're using it, it doesn't delete it right away. So this one didn't take that long. But if you haven't used it for a while, it's going to rebuild the VM. And that can take 5-10 seconds. But if you're working continuously, then going from one window to the other will not take very long. Okay, so we have done that. Let me go to this information we have here. We'll follow that. So next, I want to deploy a compute instance. So we'll take this command, which is the gcloud SDK command. Now, one thing to know is you see here the project ID is set. So how do we know what project we are working on? So you do gcloud config list command. That will list you. So I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger here. That will give you the project that you're working on. But one thing to know about Cloud Shell is it will not have region or zone set up when you restart it. So you don't see zone or region. So every time you have to set your region and zone on the Cloud Shell, or like what I have done here in the command. Let's kill that. So we go back here. Let's copy this command and bring it back out. So -- zone, the flag we are providing, US-central-1-C, you have to give that. If I don't, it's going to ask me what zone because it's not set. So let's try both ways. So we're going to deploy this compute with -- zone, and it's going to deploy the compute. And while it's doing, we can also use the other tab to set the zone and then deploy another one without the -- zone flag. So gcloud config list command, set the zone gcloud config set compute /zone to US East 1C, for example. So we set the zone. How do we do that? How do we know that we set it? We gcloud config list command. So now we will see that zone has been set. Right, and now we go back to the previous tab. We already deployed a server. We have to refresh here, and you'll see this little window popping up. That's for the web page on the top part. It's loading data, and you see server 2 already built up. Now go back to this tab here. So these are the tabs that I'm dealing with. And then you see that zone is now set to be East 1C. Now if we do gcloud compute instances create SRV04, and I don't do -- zone, it's going to deploy it in East 1C. So let's try that. And it's created already. So let's refresh it up here, and we see that. Remember, it didn't ask us for the zone. Now, if I unset the zone, for example, gcloud config unset compute zone. So it removes that gcloud config list. So you don't see that anymore, the zone. And now if we deploy that server, so gcloud compute instances create SRV06, for example. So it's asking you, is it West 1A that you wanted? If you want yes, otherwise you can say no. And then you can pick out of 50 zones, like 50 states of the United States. There are 50 zones as of recording of this video. They are growing rapidly. And you can say, no, I want it in, let's say this time, I want it in Europe, West 1D, which is 21, for example. Then it will deploy that in that zone. Let's go back here, VM instances, and we can check that out. It should be being built. There it is, finished building. SRV06 is in Europe zone. So that's how it works. Now let's look at other things we wanted to do. Nano Editor, so we can create a file. Let's look at PWG. So let's do nano index.html, for example, and we are there. So let's take this information here, HTML, and we can copy and paste as well. So we have that, and we just save it, Control O to save it, Control X to exit. So the point is we can create a file. It's a text editor, right? The next thing is we can transfer a file back and forth. So you can transfer it, download a file or an upload a file, right? So it's from the Cloud Shell perspective. So download from the Cloud Shell, or you can upload it from your computer. So we can go GCP, docs, for example, and you can go white paper and say Google infrastructure paper. So we can upload that file, and it's uploading there. Okay, while it's doing, let's go to the other window, clear that. Okay, so it's 80% done, so almost finished. So next, what we're going to do, we can download a file as well, right? So index file we created, for example, we can give a full path, right? PWT, and full path would be home, right? So that's the full path for that file, and we can do download a file. So /home to download the file, and it's downloading, and it's going to ask me where I want it, and let me download it there. So you can go back and forth between Cloud Shell and your local computer. The next I want to create is a storage bucket. So very easy to do that as well. You clear it here. The command is gsutil, which is built in, part of the Google Cloud SDK. It's built into the Cloud Shell. So you can do gsutil, make bucket, and gs colon, and the unique name, right? HCC docs. We put some numbers which probably aren't used, or letters, numbers, combination, whatever it is. Now it's going to create. Before I hit enter, I'll go to the storage here, cloud storage, and we can watch it, the bucket getting created. So I have a few buckets here, but let's create this one. And it should pop up here if it's a unique name, and we refresh the page, and you see HCC Rocks, this one right here, popped up here. So that's the bucket we just created. We can put files, we can copy files there, gsutil cp to that bucket name. So I'm gonna copy and paste that name. So let's go inside, and we should have a file there, index.html. So we can also do reverse. If we have a file here, we can bring it down. So for example, we are in this directory, not there, sorry, down here. We are in my home directory. We can create make directory test, cd to test, and we don't have anything there. We can bring that file back here. We can reverse that command, gsutil. So I'll bring that command up and then reverse it. Okay, so just trying to remove that index.html. And put it at the end, so Control E. Index2.html, for example. We can rename it here, and we're gonna download that file from that. Oh, we had to do full URL, index.html to dot, let's say, for example, and then ls. So we got it down. Of course, we can change the name from index.html to index2.html. Okay, so we know how to deal with buckets from here. And one more thing here is the code editor. A really cool thing, that's a recent feature that they added, is this code editor. So if you want to keep watching things here on this cloud platform screen, if you click this, it's going to go away. The ideal thing is to open a brand new window, make it a full screen, and then open the code editor. So you can have both. You can have the console here that you work with, and you would have the Cloud Shell as well. So it's connecting in a full screen manner. Now it's there. Clear it. Let's clear this one as well. And then click on this pencil icon up on the right. Let me draw it up. Sometimes it's easy to miss. So it's right here, this pencil icon up there is the code editor. Okay, so let's click on that. To start the code editor. So now the top part of the window has been taken over by the code editor. The bottom is still the shell. Okay, so you can open the files, and these are the files those are here, right? So we do ls here. I have Git downloaded some of the files, so those are the ones open on the top. We can download this file. We can Git clone. So Git is also part of this. We can do Git clone on getting started with Python. So we can do that. So clear the screen, getting started with Python. And it's going to come down in this directory that we are in, which is the current directory. If it already exists, then you will have to create a new one. So let's say, for example, I create another directory. So pwd make directory Python start. Yeah, Python start, and then we do Python start, and then we do Git clone in that one. And it's going to come down in that directory. Now we are Git cloning from the Google Cloud Platform. It gave me error before because I already had the directory. I could have removed it and it would have worked, but I just wanted to show you this. So now in which directory I'm at, under my home directory and Python start, I can just click on refresh here, and I would have Python start. And that's what we just downloaded. You can go to hello world. You can look at the main.python file. You can make changes here if you want. You can save the file, and you can execute it down here with a Python command. So it's a really handy way to do a quick code editing. It's not your 7x24 or 8x5 type of work environment. Visual Code or Atom or other editors might be better for that, but this is very functional. As you can see all these files, and you can modify, you can save them, and you can run them in the Cloud Shell. So that's the whole purpose of the Cloud Shell editor. There's one more feature, which is this one here that you see. It's a preview on a port, so it has a full-fledged web server built in as well, and you will use that frequently when you do the data labs, Python Jupyter notebooks in the cloud. So we will be using these ports in this web server, but it's a very handy web server built into the Cloud Shell that you can use. You can point to it and you can test it before you deploy your application. So we will take a look at that in other labs, such as Data Labs lab. And let's go back here just to make sure I covered everything I wanted to. Yes. So once again, it's a very handy tool from Google Cloud Platform, available for your GCP projects. So if you notice, you're not locked into a VM directly, but you can with the gcloud SSH command, right? With gcloud compute SSH to a particular server, and you can get there, right? So make sure that you understand it's a whole different VM, but you can get to the other VMs from it if you want, just like it's a full-fledged SDK that you would be running on your laptop. So that should do it for this lab. Make sure to clean up your resources. In fact, let me go there and do it myself so you understand. I will delete these 3 servers that I created. And I should also go to the storage and delete the storage bucket to be sure. This is the one I created, HCC rocks, and I will delete that. And that should do it for cleaning up. Once again, this was HCC GCP Lab 1026, learning about Google Cloud Shell. The power and beauty of Google Cloud Shell. That is a really useful tool. You should make friends with it and use it more and more in your learning expedition. That's it. Once again, my name is Kasey Shah from Hello Cloud Certs. Thank you very much.